Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started here. My name's Daniel Collins. I'm at Strategies Group. Just looking through the list of people here. I hope I can provide something of value to y'all. Looks like everyone here is going to be, a good bit more intelligent than me. So hopefully what we cover today is of value. But I'm excited to walk you through a couple of my favorite things about Acumatica. So we're going to go ahead and kick off the meeting here in this generic inquiry. I'm sharing my screen right here. So anytime you're building an inquiry, this is where you'll start. You'll give it a title. Go ahead and make it visible. That's probably the easiest way to do that. If you don't want it to be searchable, you can actually remove these and save it. For me, I don't really care where it is. So right now it's sitting in my data views workspace. When I'm done with it, maybe I want to move it over to the construction or the payables workspace. And I can do that just right here. All right. I recommend anytime we are building something in Acumatica, have the screen that you'll be building it from open. It will help you understand kind of where the data lives, how to break it down, and it will give you access to the actual tables and fields that you're going to use in this inquiry. So with a Control-Alt-Click, you can see my mouse has turned into this little question mark. You can actually do it up here if you'd like. You can inspect element. So you can come to the specific screen again, so AP bills, and I can click on any field. It'll tell me the table name, and it'll tell me the actual field name. In some cases, like in this case, you can see here, it'll actually give you drop-down values. That's a really nice addition that they've added in the system that saves a lot of time. So these are the values when you're trying to call data out and things like that. This is the actual back-end value. This is what's going to display on the screen, for instance. You can actually now click into the data access class in the browser. If you build reports often and have before this release, I'm sure that you have gotten pretty used to the data tables, but it used to be a little bit more difficult to figure out where things lived and what fields were key and how to join them. And now it's a lot easier because I have this data access class, Schema Browser. So from here, I just clicked right into this AP register table. And I can see all the fields available, right? And so you can actually see what's key. If you scroll to the bottom, a lot of fields on this table. You can see incoming and outgoing references. So these are going to be basically your joins on the generic inquiries. And so you can actually drill directly into those as well. So going back here, we're actually going to work on that inquiry. So let's have a business use case here of I have this bill and I can see from the bills and adjustments GI, the bill number and all that, but maybe it's to a couple different projects because I don't have single project per document set up. So I want to see by project what bills are out there. This gives us a couple options. One of the ones that we see frequently is I want the PMs to be able to see their bills. So technically this could be shown to two different PMs. So you start here. We bring in that base table. I know the project lives down here, so I'm going to do my inspect element on it again. And there we go. It's the AP Tran table. So I can actually even open that up, direct link from there. Or if I go back to my inquiry, I'm going to add the table. Search it here, and there's my table. It'll name it for me. I could give it a name if I really wanted to. Typically, unless you're doing multiple tables of the same one, you don't really care to name them. So I'm going to leave it that way. And now I need to build the relations between those tables. All right. So if I go back to my tables here, I mentioned you can do it from the actual AP Bill screen or the processing screen. You can access the data access class Schema Browser from here as well. So it's hyperlinked this way. And a lot of times this will be the way you access it because you're building it there anyways. So if I open that up for the AP invoice table, and once it loads for me, all right, now I can see all the fields, but what I'm interested in at this moment is the joins. So scroll down. And I'm looking for AP Tran. The great thing about this, it actually tells me exactly what fields to join on to get a clean join. So gone are the days of trying to guess and check. We've got the exact join here. So I need doc type to tran type, ref number to ref number. All right, simple enough. Go to my relations, add a table relation. Let's do the AP invoice to the AP tran. So for my join here, I'm going to just do a left join. You could do an inner join if you wanted to. That's going to require data be in both places. Shouldn't be an issue in this case. So parent field, type, child field from that AP tran table there, tran type. All right. It's my favorite part. Click and wait. If you go too fast, you'll actually lose that line. So I recommend giving it a second to catch up. It's building that query in the background. Next join is that ref number to ref number. All right. So if I save this, I've now got my basic joins built. So now I want to look at what am I going to add to show this information. So I'll go back to my data screen here, and I'm going to say, let's put in the type, the reference number, maybe the status, some of these financial pieces here, maybe the due date. And then I'm going to also pull off of this detail table, right? So I'm going to want the project. I'm going to want the task, cost code. And it's going to be an important distinction here because this is going to be a one-to-many join between this summary level item here and these details here. This is going to duplicate. So I'm going to be very careful about this, and we'll walk through that in a moment. So if I go to my results grid, which is what shows on the screen. So right now the data may be joined, but if you go to it, it's going to be blank. So it's not helpful for anybody. So if I go to my results grid, this is where I can add those elements. So what is that table or that object name? So for the invoice, doc type. All right, AP invoice, and we're going to do doc date. And if you wanted to figure out what the actual name was these from the actual screen, again, Control-Alt-Click will give you that name. All right. Period. Probably want the vendor. Oh, and let's do the due date. Okay. I want status as well. That would be important. Okay. Now I'm going to add the detail lines. So if I go here, go to my transaction, we wanted the project, the ID. We want the cost code ID. And we want the task. All right. And then well, since there's so many amounts, let's walk through this. Which one do we want to pull in? We want this extended amount. Query line amount. There we go. Go ahead and save that. So if I run the inquiry now, Lord willing, it'll give us data. All right. Awesome. We've got lots of information in here. So what I'm going to do is I want to take a look at this. So it's always good when you're building a generic inquiry to have a data point to build off of. Rather than just kind of looking at this and trying to discern what's going on, let me pull in the exact document that I'm looking for. And I'm seeing now I left out a critical field, which is going to be ref number. All right. Click and drag that up here. Okay. Perfect. So now when I refresh this screen, it should have been updated. All right. Very good. So I'm going to look for that exact example. Okay, so you can see here, like we had kind of expected with that one-to-many relationship, we'd see that twice. So it looks like it's duplicating. It's technically not. And in our use case, we want to see the project. So what we're going to do is add a grouping. So I would go to my groupings here, and this is going to tell the data how to combine. So I'm going to add one for ref number. And then it's important to also add one for doc type. And then the next one down, because that would just give us essentially what we already had. And it would take the last result on that project, in which case you would not actually get a true understanding of which projects were within which document. So now let's add project ID. Okay, perfect. So now if we open it up again, I'll just go ahead and refresh this. It actually won't have changed this example, but if we run it for another one, so I take that reference number out, you can see it's much less results. So we've got one example here. Here's the project that's on this document. There's a single line for it. So I'm assuming if we open up this document, we'll see that one project. You can see multiple lines, but they've all been grouped together into that one single line. It's actually going to run a calculation on that extended cost. And I'm going to tell it what to do with that amount, because again, this comes from our detail line. So we need to be careful of how that's being summarized. So go to my result grid, line amount. Uh-oh, I can't find what I need here. So you actually have the column configurator. You can add in a caption. If you're going to do a formula, you need this one, aggregate function. And important here, quick search. So let me go ahead and add those in. And we'll talk about these. So first one, caption. So if I wrote a formula here, which we're not going to get deep into formulas or anything like that, but if I did, it would have the name of formula with a bunch of numbers after it. So you would want to give that a caption. What is the formula for? Aggregate is telling it what to do within these groupings. So it's important when you have a value, for instance, like this line amount, to tell it what to do here. So I'm going to sum it. And that way, each group, aka each project on the document, will show the total amount to that project. All right. And the other thing here is using quick search. So I'm going to put the reference number in there, maybe the doc type. If there's, a description or something like that, you usually want to add that in there as well. This column will tell it which of these fields can be used within this search bar. So it would basically tell it, okay, reference this column, the ref number and the doc type right now when I search in here. So it's important that you add those in for only the relevant fields, usually description-based fields. All right. And so if I did this, and let's say now I want the project manager in here. So the project manager doesn't exist on this table. So what I would want to do is go to my, not the AP invoice, the AP trans, that's that detail level, and go figure out how I can join in my project. So I can scroll down, kind of figure out where that's coming from, and really, the table name. You can search. So you can see it's highlighting everything here. There's my table. So I can actually join this PM project table in. So what I've got to do now is go to my generic inquiry, back to my table, add in my project, the PM project table. I'm going to let it name it for me. And then I have to add it to my joins. So I'm going to add another line. The parent table in this join will be that AP tran because it's already been joined to that base table of AP invoice. I'm going to go with project. Okay. I'm going to do a left join again here because if there's no project, that's okay. I don't want to filter out that data. Okay, and now I need to know what is that join based off of. So if I go to my table again here in the DAC browser, I've got project ID on the AP-Tran table to contract ID. So if you work with projects a lot, you'll know this one already, but basically everywhere in the system, it's named project ID, except for on the project table. So be careful of that. That catches a lot of people. So I would go back to my inquiry. I go project ID. Go over here and contract ID. And remember, it's ID to ID, not ID to CD. That is a more of a visual representation of the actual identification number. Okay, again, let it calculate in the background and save. So now I can actually utilize the project table. So I go to my results grid, add in a line here, and I'm going to choose the table, the object, and let's go figure out what the name of that field is. So I'm going to my projects workspace. Give my system a second to think here. All right. So I'll just open up any old project. All right. And this is the field that I want. So again, Control-Alt-Click. So it's called owner ID. So that's important. I would have never found it. So go here, owner ID. Okay. All right, so now I've got my detail there at owner ID. So if I go back to my GI, I can refresh it. All right, so it looks like it's not set. So let me go back to this project, and I am going to make a project manager here. Let's make myself. All right. Back to my inquiry. And refresh. So now there should be, let's see here. I can use my @me function. I cannot. Okay. Make sure I joined everything correctly. Get my owner ID. And I must not have a bill on this project. So what we're going to do is we're going to open this one up. And my project manager is going to be me again, taking over all these projects. There we go. Let's see if our @me function works. Look at that. Okay, so this is one of the cooler tools in Acumatica, in my opinion. I've got an @me capability on specifically these employee lookup fields. It's actually the user ID that it's looking up to. It passes the currently logged in user's ID into that field. And in the back end, this field is actually a user ID. So it's able to look it up that way. You will, if you joined in the employee table to this one, you would join it on, basically you can't use it on the employee CD or the visual representation of the ID. It needs to be on that user ID field. But Acumatica built in a really cool function to call that and basically save us 4 joins here. So thank you, Acumatica. So anyways, I can actually set this up and I can even add a filter for it. So equals, oh, not owner, project manager equals @me. And let's see if that works. My project bills. Look at that. Just like that, I can filter it down to the specific bills for my project. One request we get outside of this is to even filter it further. So maybe take a copy of this inquiry or basically restrict the whole inquiry And let's see here. Add the employee table. This one's a little off the beaten path here, but I'll show you how this would work. So I would join the employee to the project manager. All right. And I know it's going to be the owner ID. But if I went to here and actually, like, you can click into the link itself. So let me drill down into the project. All right, so now I'm looking at the PM project DAC. So if I go down and I find owner ID, if I'm remembering correctly, you can see here where it's linked, what the field looks like. Let's see if there's a join on it. Employee. All right, I see one there. Okay, so for time activity approver, it's actually joined to the employee table. I know the owner ID is actually joined. It's probably showing as vendor. They're very similar tables. So let me just build the join here. So it's going to be owner ID. It should be, we're going to check my work, be account ID. Let it think. All right. So now that this is done, one of the cool things that we've done in the past is now I filter it within the inquiry. So this makes it a little bit more difficult for somebody, or a little more restricted, I guess. So obviously right now, just to kind of show where we're at, I've got all records that's not filtered, so I can see everything here. And then I've got my bills. So if there's something specific to me as a project manager, I can see it. What we're trying to do with this is I'm going to add, I hope this is going to function for me here. And I won't have to join in the user table, but the user ID is at me. And then let's see what that does to our results. Looks like I filtered them wrong. Let's try one more time. Account ID, owner ID. Okay, and this is how I troubleshoot. So I'll typically undo what I just did there, make sure something's not off in my join. So if it returns data, I know we probably need to take one more step. This kind of points to the fact that it is super helpful that we now can do the @me function on that lookup to the employee. So if I do this, and I will name this user, right? Now I'll join that user table to the employee. And so maybe I want to see how that join is built. So let me go back here. Again, I can access my schema this way. All right, so I'm going to close out of some of these other ones. They're holding open a lot of information, maybe slowing me down a little bit. All right, so I've got users. So if I scroll down, let's see what they can be joined to. Pretty much everything, so maybe we want to search. All right, EP employee. So the user table is called PKID. The employee table is a user ID. So let's do that in our generic inquiry. So it's going to be user ID to PKID. There we go. Think for a second. Okay. Now, let's see if we can do this. User.p. There we go. So this is the raw ID field here. I'm going to use that same @me call here and see if that gets us where we want to be. Let's change this to a left join. Got to activate that. And one more time. If this doesn't work, we'll jump back into the DAC Schema Browser and look at a couple more features in the last few minutes we've got. It is not liking me right now. When you do a change to the inquiry, you want to do a hard refresh of the screen rather than just the results. And it is not liking me right now. So apologize about that. Let's actually look here. See if we can figure this out. So one of the cool things about Acumatica, and it probably shows a little bit better in these AP, the AP details. So let me go back there. All right, preview data source. This is a extremely useful tool in the system. So if I drill down into it, you can see the raw data in the system. You can even search it. So for instance, when I'm looking at this right here, say I want to pull up, what does these details look like in that source? There's my results, and I can see the exact information, what it's going to look like. So when I'm trying to figure out, okay, how do I build these joins? What's it going to do for me that way? And where are the numbers I'm trying to get? And you can even see here, there. I wanted to do, where is that? It'll highlight it here so I can actually scroll pretty easily and find my amounts. And it shows all that data so that I can figure out and join and find the exact table information that I'm working with. This is a huge piece of information for us to build these inquiries with because it saves us a ton of time. Previously, you would probably have to build out an inquiry that just showed the raw data from that table and try to work with it there. Acumatica has done us a huge solid by giving us this link. So that is extremely helpful. And I will just take this out of here so that we can get our results again. Okay, should be able to refresh this thing. And very quickly end this presentation with a pivot. Okay, so here's all my data. Let me click here, save as pivot. Not liking that for the moment. Hold on a minute here. And I believe we have a question. So let me, oh, that would be why. One moment here, apologize. And trying to access our question here, and the screen is not loading for me. All right, perfect. So let's say this is a pivot. You can share it. Shared configuration means this saved filter is available for everybody who logs in. Not shared means it's just me. The question, it looks like a data dictionary for Acumatica. So that lists all the, okay. So as far as building, you know, any sort of calculations or things like that is my assumption. So there is in the help article. So I'll look at that in a moment. So I can break this out, for instance, if I wanted to do due date, let's do round 2, maybe it's a quarter. And the rows are going to be my projects. And what we're looking for here is actually the cost. You can tell it how to aggregate. So it defaults to sum in most cases, which is correct here. Sometimes it's a count. I want to know how many things there are. Sometimes it's count distinct, which is how many times does this specific reference come up? Average, min, max, some of the basics here. So let's see, project, that should be fine. And maybe I even want to break it out by status. This is demo data. So let's see what we got here. A lot of on hold for these projects, but it pivots it out. It's really, really great tool here. And you can actually say, okay, well, why is this amount on hold for Q1? That seems ridiculous. It drills you down into the specific detail. So now I can work with all this data. All right. So the question on the data dictionary. So we do help topics. Believe this is where I'm trying to go to. Yeah, there we go. So this will tell you how to work with the data, sometimes convert it. A lot of times, to be honest, I reference here for the date formulas. So those are usually a little complex, but you've got all sorts of formulas in here and a little bit of an expression of how they work. It's super helpful in working with the data. All right, so I'm out of time. Appreciated y'all being here. You should all get an award for sitting with it. So thank you all for participating.